Let's see, are we live?
Yep. Let's see. I'm still here.
Yeah, I'm looking on the streaming. Hopefully, it's very interesting. Oh, maybe we're live now. Let's see. It looks like we might be live. Oh, we are live. Yay! Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Awesome.
Um, okay. I just want I'm still new software. So if you're watching this on the replay, little rough start there at the beginning. All right, welcome everybody to today's episode of Psychedelic Revelations. I am Wendy Perkins Shoeff. I'm one of the co-hosts. My lovely co-host Dana Harvey is not available to come join us today. But I wanted to, before we get started, I just want to jump in with a couple brief little disclaimers, nothing big here. If you've been around, then you know them all. Um, so this is not a place for advice, no medical, legal, mental health, any kind of advice. We're not licensed professionals. Go find a licensed professional before you make any changes in your life. And this is not a drug marketplace, so please do not ask about where to get any of the medicines because that is not what we're here for. We're here for harm reduction and education purposes only. So, uh, before we begin, we like to take a moment and kind of just ground in for a moment. So, if it is safe for you, if you're listening on the replay, don't do this, don't close your eyes while you're driving, like be safe if you're driving. But if it's accessible to you, close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, and kind of just take a moment to see where you land. Like, where are you connected to the earth right now? Are you sitting? Are you standing? Are you taking a hike? Where on your body are you connected? And just kind of notice that. And now take a moment to notice your feet. Are they cold? Are they hot? What's going on with your feet? And now, as you notice your feet, take a deep breath in, hold it for a moment, and then kind of sigh it out. Oh. Still try to notice where you're connected to the earth, how it's supporting you. Take another deep breath in, hold, sigh it out. Oh. And then when you're ready to, you can open your eyes and come back into the space. All right. So today we have Jenny. I want to make sure I got her name right before I said Jenny Chen. I started to say Chan. Jenny Chen Robertson. And we're here to talk about grassroots harm reduction. And before we get started on that, let me tell you a little bit about who she is. So, if you're not aware of who she is, Jenny combines leadership with a passion for advancing psychedelic and harm and risk reduction education. She's an MBA and experience in financial services and operations, and she now applies her strategic skills as the executive director of SPAN. As one of Intertech's first graduates, Jenny is committed to evidence-based practices before she best-based practices. Has advocated publicly for therapeutic psychedelic access, including testimony before state legislators. Her specialized training includes suicide prevention, end of life care, autism informed approaches, and internal family systems. Drawing on extensive nonprofit board leadership in health and human services, Jenny knows that real change happens when people feel safe to grow. She creates inclusive spaces where safety isn't an afterthought, it's the foundation, and where education meets compassion at every turn. So, welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you for that
It,
introduction.
yeah, it's always fun to read everybody. Well, I'm reading to hear everybody's introduction and kind of know a little bit about them. Before we get started, we always kind of take a moment to thank, Mother Gaia, the ancestors that came before us, and all of the wisdom that everyone has shared through the years. And we would like to kind of open it up to you as our guest to kind of share what you're grateful for in this moment. So,
Yeah,
turn it
thank
over.
you. Yeah, thank you. It's just such a great way to start. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. I feel so grateful for so many things. I recently came back, actually just yesterday, from Asia. I was visiting family for the holidays and had an extended stay. And as my family ancestry is from Taiwan, and so I was just walking around the city, and there was just so much um, life. Just people out doing stuff and hanging out, just being with friends. And I'm walking back to my the place I'm staying, and you can just feel the energy and just it was just beautiful. And it's just like a busy, bustling city, um but still a sense of community. So I think I'm just very grateful for um that energy and that sense of community, and that realizing no matter where we are, we're always connected to each other.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we are, right?
Yeah, I think we forget,
um,
but I just of course, I don't know these people. I'm just walking down the street, and just kind of, weaving in and out of pedestrians, hearing little bits of conversation here and there, and it's just, yeah, it's just fascinating. I love that feeling, and just like, I don't know how to explain it. Just feeling that buzz of, kind of being near people.
I love that. Thank you for your share.
Yeah, thank
Um, so today we're here to talk about grassroots harm reduction. There's so many different like kind of directions that we could go into it. I'm just gonna be upfront about why I'm really excited to have this conversation is because I hear people talk about all the time of like, you know, why aren't the laws passed? Why aren't these things happening? People have a tendency to complain a lot
you.
about all the things that aren't wrong, but when it comes to actually taking action, not many people actually do
Mhm.
that. And as someone that has been involved in some other things through my life, I know it's actually not that hard to get involved, but it just kind of feels overwhelming. So I hope that through today's conversation, people will be inspired to actually take action in their local community, realize that it's not so hard to do it, and maybe get some ideas about what works and kind of what doesn't work. So just I wanted to set the stage on kind of why I'm personally very excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so I know a little bit about you, obviously, because we brought you on here. And I know what your mission is. So I want to why don't you introduce what SPAN is? And then, if you don't mind, maybe kind of talk about like what kind of spurred it to get started, because I
Mhm.
think that will help, kind of anchor in the conversation.
Yeah. So SPAN is SPAN, as in nice. Stands for the Safer Psychedelics Association of New England. We officially started in January of 2025. So we're a relatively new organization. This the idea sprung from my co-founder, Dr. Bree Reeser. She is also an Intertrek graduate, the cohort after mine. We're both based in New England, and Intertrek, of course, is a Portland, Oregon program. So her cohort, a small group leader, knew that I was based in Boston and put us in touch. And together, with my advocacy with the Measure 4 that was in Boston, or that was in Massachusetts in 2024, I did a lot of phone banking for them. And I just realized I would call people and I would ask them for their vote. You vote yes on Measure 4. And a lot of them would say, Jenny, thanks for calling. I support plant medicine. This is great. I'm like, great. So can I count on your vote? No. And then it's like, wow, why? And then they would go on to a lot of reasons about, well, I don't want the kids getting into it. I don't want, it's going to be safe. I don't want people growing it. I don't want people walking in and buying it. And I just realized there's a lot of misconception. And people who were on the fence about it didn't know very much about it. So there was the piece of not understanding what plant medicine is, and then the second piece of that, like the 1A piece of that, not understanding what, whether it's dangerous or not. I think by and large I think there's an unofficial poll, like 80% of Americans or something have had an experience with plant medicine, quote unquote, right? Like quote unquote plant medicine. Not really sure how plant medicine is defined there. But certainly when, I'm fine admitting this, when I went to a very liberal arts undergrad in California, I had my first experience in undergrad. It was fun. It was great. It was with a trusted friend with whom I'm still friends with now. But it wasn't in the context as we're talking about it now, like therapeutic use, safety measures and protocols. That was also many moons ago. I'm not going to reveal how many, but many, many moons ago. And so, as science progresses and all things do, we've come a long way. So there was that first piece of not understanding and the misinformation about it. And the second piece, those who have experienced it and maybe had positive experiences, who were for plant medicine and legalization, what that actually meant. And so Bree and I got together. She had suffered a personal loss in her family, and that's what brought her to Intertrek, because there was kind of anecdotal evidence or information that psilocybin is good for, could be used in addiction medicine. I came to psychedelics because I think a lot of listeners may understand through Michael Pollan's work. So I'm originally from the Bay Area, huge fan of Michael Pollan. And when his book came out, no idea what it was about, but I typically just get his books and just read them and enjoy them. And so I listened to it I think it was during COVID actually. And I thought to myself, am I am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? I actually listened to it twice, right? And for those of you who have listened to the audiobook, I think it's like a 12-hour audiobook or something. And so I thought, and I was going through a personal challenge in my life at that time, and I really wanted to understand the therapeutic use of psilocybin towards depression, specifically. And so that's what brought me to plant medicine. And so after having an experience specifically with depression and having had a positive experience coming out from that, it was so transformative and life changing that I realized I needed to learn more about this. And the more I learned, the more, quite frankly, in the beginning, and again, maybe to your earlier point of it feels so overwhelming, that the more confused I got. It takes a lot of discernment and groundedness to decipher legitimate information from, anecdotal, which could be very much also true, right? But to discern what is applicable to you and what might be helpful. And so I feel very fortunate that I had help and I was able to find legitimate sources and resources to help me, navigate through the kind of, corn maze that is plant medicine right now.
Okay. That that helps set the stage for me and some of my questions that I'm going to be going. So I get why you guys came there. What is it that you actually are doing? So you're providing education like to the public? Like how does that look like? Like
Yeah,
what's going on?
great question. So
Yeah.
our original concept was to educate, and it still is, remains. So our first goal is to destigmatize psychedelics, because that was the second. Oh, actually, I should jog back. During the calls, my phone banking calls, there was a lot of, that misinformation. People are like, oh my God, is it addictive? And all of this kind of fear around it. And so we realized there's so much fear because it's so stigmatized. So our number one goal was to, hey, give people good information, legitimate information, research, evidence-based information. So we wanted to train, teachers, parents, or not, I shouldn't say train, but we want to inform people of, this is what the science says. It's not addictive because of these factors that define addiction, right? There's like 8 factors under the kind of addiction medicine area. And so, this is that I apologize to anyone listening. That is not my area. My area is the speaking part and the organization part. Dr. Bree, she's a doctor of behavioral health, so she knows all the science parts of it. So together we have that good synergy. And so, we wanted to let people know that it's not addictive and this is why. It's okay to talk about it and this is why. And then we just coming out of that legacy from, Tim Leary, that, the Nixon administration and all of that kind of fear mongering that governments do. We wanted to let people know that it's okay to talk about it. So we wanted to give teachers, parents education about it. And then with the rise of psychedelics in the mainstream, you and I are talking about it today, but so are Hollywood podcasts, right? Like so many celebrities have done ayahuasca. I mean, Will Smith wrote a whole, like, I think 3 chapters of it in his biography, right? And so we just thought, wow, people that are following these well-known celebrities, influencers, and so forth on socials, people are probably going to do it. We want them to be safe. What we don't want is that, because we know the therapeutic benefits of it, we didn't want people to experience it, have a negative experience, and then perpetuate the negativity about it. Like, I think I forgot who I was talking. Maybe you and I were talking about this just a few minutes ago. We tend to, I think, spread the bad news, when we read reviews, it's always like this, this most horrible experience ever, or, don't go here kind of a thing, right? And that's always what's sensationalized and brought to the top. And so we wanted to alleviate fears. And then so if people are going to try this, what are they going to do? They might call emergency services. And when emergency services respond, what does that response typically look like? Loud, a lot of people, our medical system is not designed for comfort or healing. It's really designed for emergency response, death prevention, right? In the most extreme. And so that in and of itself could be traumatizing for someone if they are under the influence of a plant or psychedelic medicine or psychedelic and so substance. And so we also wanted to get to first responders, emergency room clinicians, EMTs and so forth. And so that is our audience. We want to destigmatize. We want to give those who may come into contact with psychedelic substances, either themselves, their friends, loved ones, children, neighbor, etc., community member, or they may encounter in their work. As an example, we have Sarko Jajarian, Lieutenant in Winthrop Police on our advisory board. He, some of your listeners may be familiar with him. Most recently, he was actually on Joe Rogan's show, which I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan. However, I do think he has a big platform. And he, one of his officers was called to respond to a young person, a younger and, youngish person, I think teenage years, that was in a psychedelic, bad, quote unquote, bad trip. And I think this young man's parents didn't know what to do. The officer on the scene got there, calmed him down, and it could have been potentially dangerous because this person was having a very active experience. And so luckily the officer knew what to do, was able to de-escalate, bring the temperature down. And, I don't know what happened to the young man afterwards. Your listeners and I, and that we need integration and kind of support for that. However, at least there wasn't harm. The parents were okay. The person having the experience eventually came back to a non-altered state. And so, but bravo to that officer, because he knew how to respond, because Sarko had talked about, hey, this is what someone is like. It's not like being under the influence of cannabis. It's not like being under the influence of alcohol or another, street substance, etc. Right. And so this is just we view this as another safety, public health, harm and risk reduction area that we need to be prepared for. And not talking about it doesn't make it any better.
Yeah, that is for sure. Um, it's interesting about the stigma part. I wanted to kind of, go back on that. So I am one of the uh, a researcher on a project called Mothers of the Mushroom,
Mm,
and it's a survey. So mothers who ingested mushrooms, and they talked about the results, right? And one of the things that was really interesting as I was going through the research, that we're kind of looking for certain things, but one of the things I personally love data, like data is like really fun for me, um, is that you kind of don't know what the story is until you look at you might have an idea what it is, but what ended up really, to me, what became really clear through it wasn't that it was harmful. Not to say that there's no harm. Like there were some adverse effects occasionally. Um, but in general, the biggest issue that people had was actually stigma. And I will throw into stigma the legality, because of the legality, like they kind of go hand in hand, and how people were trying to figure things out on their own instead of getting support because it's not legal. And so they didn't know how to get support, but they knew they needed it and it was working. They just maybe needed some, tweaks to whatever they were doing, right? And that has really stuck with me because there was over 400 responses, right?
mm,
And I read through all of them multiple
wow.
times, and it was just over and over and over again, this whole thing around stigma and how that was what was difficult. It wasn't the experiences with the mushrooms itself. Like, not, as I said, there were some, what people might say, bad experiences, but they were manageable, and there was always lessons learned and all of the things that go with it when you take a therapeutic approach. However,
Mm,
I will say I sometimes personally struggle with the focus on therapy because we as humans are designed to experience pleasure, like in all the forms, and a a healthy body is actually a happy body that experiences joy, that experiences, life to its fullest, like biologically, that it is, we are healthier when we are happier.
mhm,
And I sometimes worry that with the focus on therapy, like
mm.
therapeutic purposes, that we're still kind of like reinforcing that it's not okay to have a good experience, or to turn to the plant medicine for,
Therapy
you know
only.
recreation. I like to think of it as recreation, right?
Mhm,
So like
mhm.
creative experiences, however that looks for you. um what are But I know when it comes to getting laws passed, that's a harder sell, isn't it?
Well, I do want to emphasize that SPAN, our organization itself, is apolitical, right? The way we structure SPAN, the way that the things that we talk about, our education platforms and trainings and so forth, are the way we see it is this way. Whether or not psychedelics are legalized, it doesn't matter to us. We continue, we are perpetual no matter what, because if it's legal, great. People come to us for correct, I would say correct, for evidence and education based information. and we want that. Great. We want to, dispel misconceptions. We want people to have the right information, right? Two, if it doesn't become legalized, if there isn't a legal pathway, also okay, right? Because wait, I'm sorry. The first one I said was if it becomes legalized, we want people to come to us. If it doesn't become legalized, people still need that same information. And
Mhm.
I, without getting controversial or weird about it, but it's kind of like um, sex, right? Like being, I am being a little provocative now, but it's like we didn't talk about sex. Sex ed wasn't a thing. And then as sex ed became a thing, then it became this like medical thing that we teach children in like 10th, fifth grade or whatever, when they're 10, like biologically, this is what sex is, right? And I'm here, I'm visiting my family right now. And so I have nieces and nephews that are still in high school, and I'm talking about them. What are they studying? They're studying biology, and then their teachers are talking about like gestation periods. And it's funny because I found myself feeling a little like, ooh, a little uncomfortable. But I was like, no, no, you got to just talk about it because this is normal biology. And you know what? We also still find sex pleasurable, even though it's biological, right? So that's kind of the same approach that I think personally I think about psychedelics, that I personally do not have any critiques around recreational use. In fact, I think for some young people, recreational use could be a huge benefit, right? I shared that I used, I say, I don't, I'm trying not to move, trying to be more mindful of my language, and not say used. I tried psychedelic substances, right, in college, impressionable age, 20s, right? And they were some of the best experiences I had. They gave me confidence. I had a good group of friends that I felt close to, a community that if I didn't have that community, would I have been a different person? Would I have been feeling, would I have felt isolated? Perhaps, right? And so I do think that recreational use could be beneficial, right? And I know a lot of people that I phone banked with, they take mushrooms, they go on a hike. Awesome, great. Does that make you a more patient parent, colleague, manager, etc.? Does it give you insights to your work? Terrific, right? Um, and I mean, again, this again might be a little controversial, but as a society, drinking is so accepted, right? As someone whose family who's been personally affected by alcoholism and substance use disorder in my own family, I would say alcohol is way more dangerous and detrimental. In fact, I've actually been hit by a drunk driver. Like both my mom and I were in a terrible car accident by someone who was intoxicated, and it was a life-changing accident. It was terrible, right? And so um and we talk about alcohol all the time. We talk about how pleasurable it can be, people like mixology and so forth, right? But we also know we shouldn't drink and drive. We also
Mhm.
know, we buckle up when we get into the car, right? And so, this is just another thing that, as times change, we need to talk about it.
Yeah. Um, I also was hit by a drunk driver too.
Yeah, scary.
My
Oh,
like this part of my jaw is not has a like these aren't real teeth
oh,
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
scary. Oh my gosh.
Um, so yeah, all of that, that went into that. Um, yeah, and one of the things too, as someone that's here in the space, like I'm very aware of their safety profile, and actually, so I'll bring it back to Mothers of Mushroom too, because I feel like
Yeah.
it's part of this conversation. Um, that I wanted to see the data because I was very worried about, okay, moms. I'm a mom. I have two kids. I was struggling with my own ideas. And I could feel that a lot of it was just social because I didn't know the answers, right?
Mhm.
So I knew that what I was feeling was informed by something that was not like education, right? Like
Right.
it was like I didn't know the science on it. I mean, I do now, but at the time,
Yeah.
like I didn't really understand the science on it. I didn't understand a lot of the kind of technical, part of it. And so anything I was feeling was completely just based off of hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved in the project, because I really wanted to get my hands on the data so I could make informed decisions. And through that, I was also becoming more educated about all kinds of psychedelics, and psilocybin in particular was one of them. At that time, that was very much my focus was understanding how psilocybin worked. And when I learned that psilocybin is safer than aspirin, like
Mm-hmm.
there's a scale of like safety, and it's it's actually safer than almost every single medication that's available. And I forget what the level is, but I was like, why are so then what's the problem?" Right? But I do realize that there's the mental part of it, and I do think, like, personally, we have such a huge emphasis on, you got to think straight, think logical. Like it's all mind, 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 and productivity. Like they're very tied, right? You have to be able to think and produce. And when that gets affected, like that really messes with people, because our society is built on those beliefs of, you know, you have to be think clearly and be productive. My younger son is disabled. So this is I think about a lot of these things a lot, because I started kind of falling in, I was in it, and then with my son who was disabled, having to kind of come to terms with, what will it be like to have a son that will never think logically, have the conversations that, other people depend on, have like that mind. Not to say he doesn't have his own thinking abilities, but just not what we expect. And he will probably never be a productive member of society, but he brings so
Well,
much value, right?
as we define it, he is
Yeah.
absolutely a productive and valuable member of society. And thank
No,
you so much for sharing that.
that value, he's 100% invaluable, right?
Absolutely.
Like that is value. That's the whole point. Like, so even right there, how I said productive, and you're like, no, he's valuable. I'm like, you even like, even in
Yeah.
this little conversation,
Yeah.
we start attaching value and productivity
Yeah.
together,
We do.
and
Yeah.
they're not the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you kind of take that psychedelic lens too, and the stigma and oh, but there could be harm, they could lose their mind. Like, oh, are you now worried that they're not valuable? And I
Right.
think that it is a very difficult conversation to like bring people to, because it's so ingrained into who we are. And I can tell you, my son is very happy. And for many years, I just wanted to fix his brain, right?
Oh,
Like, I want to
yeah.
fix his brain. And
Yeah.
I had a day where I was just uh, sitting there and realizing, like, he's happy. Who am I to say fixing his brain is going to make him happier? Like, what's the whole point of living? Like, he's very loved. He feels loved, and he makes everybody laugh. He's super social. He's got like, what's there to fix, right? Um,
Oh,
so I
it's
think I think these are all part of the deeper conversation, which make it difficult because it's not so black and white,
mm-hmm. No,
you
thank
know.
you so much for sharing that. That is beautiful. Yeah, you're totally right. Like we attach so much value to productivity, especially I want to say in Western society, but it's not true. It's every society really. Like it's most societies, right? Um, and it's and the whole idea of like, oh, God forbid you lose your mind, and then there's an interesting thing if you think about it. There's we value art, as a society, as a culture. I mean, I think, there's this tension between like what's art and so forth, but yet we have creative outlets, right? I'm not a fan of, I actually like don't watch any TV. And I was actually sharing this story with my brother last night. I was like on the plane and there was someone next to me who like designs shoes with like basketball players. And again, I kind of live under a rock, except for like my psychedelic stuff and like my work. And so this person is super nice, kind of talking to me about, oh, he's, designed shoes with these people. The only person I knew was Kanye, right? Like even under living under a rock, I can know who Kanye is. But he was naming all these people, and then he just kind of looked at me, paused, and he goes, "You are fascinating to talk to." I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "You don't know who any of these people are." Um, I'm glad that you're finding so much amusement in my ignorance, right, of like athletes. But but the whole point is that there's this tension between creativity and we value it. And yet, this one could even argue all of like the reality TV that came from somewhere, it came from someone's mind. Is it creative? I don't know, but it is what we kind of consume now, right? I guess most people consume it. And so I think that there's we're just very confused as a uh culture in some ways. And so, but I think even more so now, and then this I think lends itself into a deeper conversation, talking about your earlier points of all the stigma and all of the thoughts you personally were feeling around psilocybin, right? Of course, dare. I was a dare kid, right? And so, just say no to drugs, kind of dare to say no to drugs, so forth. And so, Bree and I, we talk about this, and we kind of want Span to be kind of like that, but not to say no to drugs, but to say yes to education, right? We want it to be okay to talk about these things. And then we also recognize that, in this current administration, a lot of things are getting confused, right? What is healthy anymore? We just had a revamp to the food pyramid. Is that what's healthy? Do we trust these institutions telling us what's good for us? Then there's this whole overhaul of the, childhood, vaccinations. So again, I don't have children, so I don't know how to comment on that. But I do know that I was vaccinated. Consequently, I've had a very long, length, God willing, a full life so far of, free from childhood diseases that have, killed children in the past. Um, but it's it's a very loud, I don't want to say marketplace. It's a very loud world, and then we have to be able to discern what is actually good information. And then now with there's so much, you know, talking about feeling in our bodies, which I'm a huge proponent of, right? And then yet there's also these functions that we also perform that we don't even think about. You and I breathe, we're talking, these are all things that are just natural. We don't have to think about it, right? Our body is still digesting and etc. And yet, it's just there's always going to be this kind of, I think, tension between our brain, our body, between productivity and creativity. And we live in between of all of this. And that is where in between, these slots in between, I think is where life really occurs. Right. And so yeah, there's just a lot, a lot everywhere.
Yeah, what's interesting about all of this? So you're talking about this side and that side, and everyone's so different. Just like you sitting next to the person on the plane, like you guys have such different, interests. And I think that in education becomes even more important because, kind of bring it back to like why we're here. Um, like when you care about something and you know so much about it, it's really hard to remember that other people just do not know the things that you know. And they have a different opinion. They will like things that you don't like, and they will hate things that you love. Like it's just, that's a part of the beautiful human experience. And you don't know what people know or don't know, and you don't know what their life is. And I think education really is kind of foundational for making any kind of change, because otherwise they just only know what they know, right? Like we have to be out there talking, having these conversations about all of the complexity, because it's not as, I don't think it is a simple answer, but I do think it is simple to take, it's much simpler to take action than what people think. So kind of going in that direction, you had mentioned that the police officer that went on Joe Rogan, right? That
Sarko?
you, yeah, um, that, so you guys had worked with him to like to educate him. Is that what had
Oh no,
happened,
so
or no?
yeah, so Sarko's a fascinating, fascinating man, great personal friend, and such a personal hero too. So um, he studied philosophy as an undergraduate and then ended up becoming like a police officer. And then he got a master's in therapy. And then he was like moonlighting as a therapist because being in law enforcement, and he calls himself, I believe he calls himself a peace officer. Um, officers, I think it's like 5-to-1 ratio on a daily basis encounter I forget what the technical term of it is, like danger, basically. They're 5-to-1 more times than a typical person not in law enforcement, not in peacekeeping, etc., to encounter traumatic events, right? Whether it's your own traumatic event or whether it's secondary trauma, being a rescue person, you encounter that, right? And so he just realized, like, gosh, there's very little support for folks that are in this field. And so he would also see officers, those in the industry, as a mental health specialist. He then heard about the MAPS training program, went to his superior and said, hey, if we're going to be responding to these things, we should know how these people are feeling, right? So he got special permission, or whatever they call it, special dispensation or something, to participate in the MAPS trials. And he became a MAPS trained therapist, or like kind of psychedelically trained. So he had one psychedelic experience his whole life, and was totally transformed by it. And after coming out of that, he realized, oh my gosh, we have to be able to train people and to educate people about this and inform people about this. And so that in and of itself was life changing, right? And he has I think he is working on a nonprofit and organization to help those in the profession get access to psychedelic substances without endangering their profession, because it can be so life-changing and transformative, and help people who are in law enforcement and so forth, and these tangential, I'm not trying to exclude anyone, but in this kind of umbrella term, become hopefully better at what they do, or at least perhaps bring some more humanity to what they do. There's some groups right now that I think that I just want to dose, but that aside, as a personal person, not as a SPAN leader, but and so but to bring some more humanity to the world right now, because I think what we're lacking is we're lacking a few different things, but I think personally humanity is one of those things that we need to talk a little bit more about, I think.
You know,
So
I want to kind of jump in real quick and mention something. So remember we were talking about news
mm,
earlier. So by definition, as a reminder, news is not the normal,
mm-hmm,
right? And so it's hard when you feel very passionately about something and you see news that is conflicting, what you feel passionate about, whatever it is. Like,
mm-hmm,
remember, everyone's different, right?
mm-hmm,
If you're a a sports fan and you like sports team A and they're playing sports team B and sports team B wins, it's an awful game. But if you're a sports team B, it's it's an amazing game, right? So it's very important to kind of always remember that this thing that you are passionate about, some people just don't care about, and that if there is something like, because I know I kind of know where you're going with the humanity thing, and so without calling it out, directly, it's hard to remember that that really is not the norm,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's it might become it might start to be the norm with more exposure, right? Because people kind of anchor in on their side,
Well,
right? And so then they're
it's that negativity
yeah,
bias we were talking about
yeah.
earlier, right? Again, but um, the fear around psychedelics. Oh, you, same thing, right? You talk to both sides. I know people who've done psychedelics, not people, not personally, but you hear people say, "Oh, I've known someone who did psychedelics, totally lost their mind. It's horrible. Don't do it." Right? And then, of course, you and I both know people that have experienced psychedelics and had beautiful life-changing experiences, right? And I mean, you and I are here. I started this organization because I'm passionate, because I know the kinds of change it could um, facilitate,
Hmm.
provided that people are using it safely, right? So that is kind of when we talk about our passions and why we're here. You and the moms for mushrooms, me for my education. The reason I wanted to start an education organization is that education has been the foundation for my life, right? I'm an immigrant, my family immigrated, and you talk to many immigrant families, especially in the 80s, Asian diaspora, right? The reason they came was for better life, sure, right? And the education systems in our home countries are so restrictive. And so my family growing up, this was a very common thread that, when you don't know how lucky you are, of course, there's guilt and shame in every good immigrant family. And so then, right? And then, and then it's also, you know, you get to experience a different education system because you would not be able to learn about this and that if we had stayed where my family is from. And so, and I think leaning it for me, I leaned into that. Education has given me so much opportunity that I was, it gave me the courage to do a lot of things that I otherwise would not have done. And so, which is why an education organization is at the heart, is at the core of my being. And I founded an education organization because just like you're saying, that people are, the more informed people are, the better decisions that they can make.
Yep.
It's a little confused. The landscape is a little confusing right now. Okay, especially talking to young people, talking about AI, and I think it's really hard to be a young person right now because there's so many things. It's like, is that real? Do I trust my eyes? Um, and but yet at the same time, this isn't a time where so much information and education is available. It is such a flourishing, rich period, and also quite a confusing period too, I think, right? And so it's always that kind of, and like both can be true. So
Yeah. Um, so how, so I love that you are reaching out to education. Like, I think you said, so like teachers, um, what does that look like? So what does it actually mean to be doing this kind of work? Like, is it really difficult? Is it super time consuming? Can it be done, you know, if you're a mom and running your own business or like what is, you know, what what do you see actually kind of moves the needle forward?
so so I can share with you what we do and then how people can get involved, especially, and also I think it depends on where you live. Like I'm very fortunate. I live in Massachusetts, right? It's a very liberal, very open society in many ways, a little conservative in other ways too, right? But yet we had a bill, and I think having that political action helps because then it becomes a topic of conversation a little more readily. also what helps in Massachusetts is that we're home to so many education institutions, right? I think in the city of Boston, greater Boston, there are 22 universities just there, right? And so a lot of research, very research rich. We're also fortunate to have folks like Eliza Dushku. She came out and was very open about her psychedelic experience. She and her spouse funded a big research project at Harvard, Brigham and Women's Hospital, and so forth. So it's very easy for a resident of Massachusetts to kind of talk about it because it's there, right? And what we do is we provide online education platforms or workshops. So last year we actually held 9 events, a combination of online and in-person events. So we do harm and risk reduction. We participated in Granite Burn, which was the New Hampshire local burn of Burning Man.
Mm-hmm.
This year, we're going to be participating in Granite Burn again, providing harm reduction, and also Wicked Burn, which is Maine's local burn, and I think we might be we're working on some other local burns as well. In addition, we had folks talk about tapering from antidepressants because we also understand that, personally for me, it was how does psilocybin affect depression and how can it aid in depression, right? And so we realized that when folks want to have a psychedelic experience or maybe interested in it, are they going to taper? What are some things to note, when tapering, how to properly taper, things to think about. And so, do you need to taper? There's a lot of misconception around that, right? For certain substances, you might want to consider taper. For substances, you don't, right? And so we had a nurse practitioner talk about that. There's also a lot of interest in psychedelics for end of life. So really our topics, our education workshops are around, like, I want to say they're neutral per se, but they are topics that touch everyone. Everyone is going to pass. I mean, that's not a very popular sentiment, but as a Buddhist, like, death is inevitable, right? We all know this. We just try to push it away. And yet, there's this huge movement in end of life care and psychedelics. And so we had end of life psychedelics. Chris, I can't remember her last name now, but she started end of life care with end of life psychedelic care. She talked about all the research surrounding that. Even the Johns Hopkins research came out with terminal cancer patients, right? And that's kind of the second, I would say second, but that's kind of the initial research that kind of brought psychedelics back. And what happened to these folks who were facing a terminal diagnosis? Michael Pollan talks about it in his book. There's been several other documentaries about it now. And so we talked about, last year we also had Larry Norris from Decrim, a national decrim movement. He talked about what decriminalization actually means and what it actually can do and what it is and what it isn't, because there's this, again, fear around, if you decriminalize, are people going to be running around on psychedelics? And so we really try to talk about things that are maybe slightly uncomfortable, but it's there. These are topics that people talk about. We also hosted QPR training, which is suicide prevention, gateway suicide prevention training. And it is from the QPR Institute. QPR stands for question, persuade, refer. So you want to try to prevent someone from committing suicide. And so that is something we're also bringing back this year because we had such interest in it. And, if someone is in the depths of depression or having some debilitating situation in their life, the dark thoughts permeate, right? And so we wanted to host these types of events and that are educational, that really kind of answer those kind of like awkward and perhaps uncomfortable questions. And then in addition, so we have those online types of events. Then
real quick question on the online, if you don't mind. Are they are they paid? Are they free? What do you like? How do you get people into them? Like the people who need the information, or is it just, because people in psychedelic space are like, oh yeah, let me jump in, but like we already know this stuff, you know?
So we try to make it as our one of our pillars is to make our programming as affordable as possible. So, for the QPR training, there is a little fee because you get a certificate after leaving, and the trainer that we bring on, she is a certified QPR trainer. So after attending this training, you are also QPR certified. So there is a fee for that. I think it might be like $10. And so our yeah, very affordable. So we try to make our trainings as affordable as possible. If there is a fee, we just, the fee is the fee. We try to pass it on. We don't add anything on top of that. We are completely 100% volunteer run. I'm a volunteer. I'm not paid by my own organization. I hope one day that we get to be big enough to be able to have full-time actual employees and so forth. But right now we are 100% volunteer, 100% passion project out of our hearts. And so, but we also know that there's this need for an unbiased information. Again, Bree and I, we are psychedelic friendly. However, we take ourselves out of that lens. This is the information. Everything we present is this is the information. This is where you can find the paper that supports that. This is what that paper says, etc. And so we just want to be a resource for people who want information and who want to volunteer with us to help run our events. So we have a fundraiser actually coming up to hopefully continue to fund our events. We are hosting a wellness rave at the first weekend of February. And so that's going to be a fundraiser. Dr. Bronner's is one of our sponsors. So we're very fortunate, again, to be in Massachusetts and to be able to talk about these things very openly. Now, to your question, I do remember your question about how do people get involved if they are not in a place that is as friendly. I think both you and I were at Psychedelic Sciences this past summer, and I was able to network with a bunch of psychedelic organizations. It does take some, I think, digging and some patience and tenacity, but I think there are organizations out there. I mean, there's one in I think Atlanta, like in the South. There's a psychedelic organization in, I want to say Tennessee. I know with someone there. So I think I know there are organizations and communities out there. And it just depends on whether someone wants to get involved because of, again, that stigma. But I also do think the more that we can talk about it, the less stigmatized it can become. I mean, I will share my own family when I started talking about this, 3.5 years ago. I mean, I'm fortunate. I don't come, I'm of Asian descent, but my family isn't like a traditional, very, I guess, stereotypical Asian family. And I've always been kind of a black sheep, again, forging my own path because I feel confident enough because I research and educate myself on things. Not to say I've not made mistakes, but so my family just kind of side-eyed me and just kind of said, well, she's going through something right now, and she's gone through things in the past. She's come out of them in the past. And this is just one of those things that she's going through right now. And then, now 3.5 years later, there's so much research about how psilocybin could be beneficial, especially for neuroplasticity and so forth, and our age-related illnesses, Alzheimer's and so forth. Now my family, they're kind of like, huh, maybe we should be studying about that. Huh, maybe she was onto something, And this is not to say kind of like I was right. There's none of that. But I think, again, it's coming to the mainstream. It's going to be out there. My niece shared with me, she's still in high school. She wants to study cognitive science. And I said, that's great, honey. Tell me more about why you want to do that. And then I said, by the time you go to, grad school and so forth, psychedelics will probably be legal and you'll probably talk about it. And you can come and ask me about what it was like when we were in the dark ages.
That would be amazing. Um, yeah, I for as once again, for those of us who know and know the history and all that stuff, we know that prior to 1955, psychedelics were legal. They were
Mm-hmm.
being used for therapy, they were being used recreationally. And the truth is that over I know what you're talking about, like the psychedelics, like as the bigger category, right? It's not to say there's not harm. It's like a knife. You know, people use knives every single day to cook, to cut their food. But you can hurt yourself with a knife. That's a very real thing. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't use a knife. It just means like, hey, this is how you use a knife safely. And unfortunately, because of the illegalization, the prohibition, and even like the prohibition into the research, like all of the massive, attack on it, we lost the the wisdom of how to use it safely. And I think that is probably the most damaging part. And that's why people are looking and like going, oh my God, no, you should never touch a knife. Like it can be harmful. And they're not wrong that because it can, but everyone who uses a knife is like, what? Like it's just a knife. Like,
Oh no, don't
yeah,
run with scissors, right? I mean, like,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, although honestly, I think running with these scissors is more dangerous, like, in general, and also thinking about how millions, if not billions of people throughout the world have used psychedelics. If it was dangerous, we would really know. Like, we know fentanyl is dangerous. Why? Because there's deaths. We know alcohol is dangerous. Why? Because there's deaths. Like
yeah,
there's harm. Like we see it, right? Like we know there's a problem with opioids. We know there just there isn't this, right?
yeah,
And yes, there's the occasional, but it is not there's nowhere near the numbers. And there's always going to be outliers anyway. Like
yeah.
that's just the way the world works. you know? Um so
I love,
I
I,
love what what I
well,
love what you guys are doing here. So I just
Well, no, thank you. I was actually saying I love what you're talking about, the kind of the indigenous, wisdom. We call it indigenous wisdom. In my family, we just call it like medicine. So my family, growing up, it's more, I guess, traditional Chinese medicine. Like, oh, it's cold, you should be eating this, or oh, you're not feeling well, you should have some of this, right? And so, ginger tea. We now know ginger is great for nausea, etc., so forth, right? It warms the body and so forth. But growing up, we had desserts that had ginger in the wintertime, and in the summertime, we ate other foods, right? And we do all of this in the past out of necessity, just seasonality, right? But now we live in such again, it's like it's like overload. It's just so much um prosperity, if you will, right? I could get, I'm in California right now, but gosh, even if I was in Massachusetts, I can get an avocado in the wintertime. I could probably even find watermelon if I wanted to in the deep, frozen tundra that is Boston in February, right? I mean, and we just have so much abundance that I think we forget there is a reason for, we do what we do. And this was used as medicine. It was used as part of the culture and, recreationally, so forth. And it's okay. We, I, I don't know, thinking about things like alcohol, like, do we use alcohol as medicine? I'm trying to think. Maybe, I guess we do. I guess certain cultures do. Like, I think I've probably fed alcohol to like get me to sleep when I was a kid. Like, but I mean, there's just so many things that I think we've lost, and now we need everything. And this is not again to say, um, that is not the right format. But the opioid crisis started with pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, like everything. This is why I think it's so confusing now. Like, we have folks that are in the white coats telling us this is okay, and yet we have this other kind of thing that happened from it. And so, again, I think this is through this confusion why Bree and we are so passionate about giving folks, giving or helping legitimate information be available and helping people understand why someone may want to consider psychedelic substances, and also the language that we use around it. We have a psychedelic safety essentials primer. We're working on volume 2 right now, so we're adding a bunch of, again, the research is changing so rapidly. We're adding more updated information to it, and so we're hoping that'll be available sometime in Q1.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a comprehensive guide. However, we hope that, the research, the papers, it'll point folks in the right direction if you want to research more. And so through all of the confusion, all the kind of, misinformation out there, we hope to at least be a resource of, hey, this is where you can find legitimate information. And if we don't know, we will research it and we can always get back to you. We're not, we can't possibly know everything. And so that's kind of where our goal is, to at least help people have a neutral start. There's never any judgment. You come with us with any question. I'm always happy to answer any question. And yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the birth of our organization out of, to kind of out of fear. I think I was reading something, and I want to be able to find where I read this, but it's always stuck with me, that there's two primary emotions that drive us: love and fear, right? And fear can keep us from doing a lot of things, and it can also make us do a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love is the same, right? We do this because we love people and we want people to we don't want people to suffer. We want people to find, legitimate information to help them, point them in the right direction, because we think that fear causes a lot more damage.
Yeah. Um, I have a question to ask you in a second, but I just want to say, when people, uh, I'm very up on science. So partly because of my son, I've learned way more about biology than I ever thought I would. But when people say like love or fear, biologically, we are designed to either focus on stress and try to avoid that stress, or focus on pleasure. And that's it. Like your attention is on either one. And so you can say fear and love, right? There's many different ways in which you can kind of phrase that. But at the end of the day, it's either stress or pleasure, and the choice is yours on what you want to focus on.
Yeah, it's how it manifests in your life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so before we kind of wrap this up, I wanted to ask you, you've talked about all the different things that you guys have done, and I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. What could other grassroots organizations, regardless of what they're doing, like what would be some of like the key takeaways that you have learned through this process of creating Span?
Yeah, a great question. Thank you for that. Gosh, I would say the biggest lesson is patience and tenacity. And again, I think you hit it right on the nail earlier, that being in the space, we know so much, and we sometimes forget other folks are starting from, behind, way behind from where we started from. There's so many experiences. Again, everyone's lived experience is so different, and their starting points are everywhere. And so I think that sometimes there could be a lot of passion in the space and people can feel left out. And so one of the things I really try to remember is to meet the person where they're starting from. And it could be negative 0.0000, right? And like and that's okay, because that was a brave thing for them to even ask you about this. And so the lesson, my most valuable lesson, and this is, I think, spreads beyond even span, really, is just patience and tenacity, but in a metered, measured way. And again, I think that is also just my personality, that I'm a very a measured person. And so that, that I think has served us span and served us well, in that we've made mistakes and we've had to retract and apologize and to kind of, correct ourselves. And that's part of the journey, like, because from these mistakes is where we know how to improve. In terms of, I can't speak to other grassroots organizations, because I mean, everyone is has their kind of their goal. And again, I am so fortunate in Massachusetts. There's so many different organizations that are in the space, that we all focus on a different aspect, but we all kind of know of each other. We're all, kind of friendly, and we try to collaborate on things from time to time. And so again, it's a whole ecosystem. I think that the secondary, I don't know if it's a lesson or a tenet to think about, is that we are an ecosystem. There is what you're doing with moms and mushrooms advances what we're doing with span, honestly. Because why? Because at the end of the day, you are normalizing psychedelic conversations. And this podcast is also part of this whole ecosystem, because we are now just you and I are your mom, I'm, we're both like, go to work, law abiding, you know, for the most part, right? And then like testing citizens. We're not out there doing crazy, crazy stuff. Like, we are progressing this conversation, and hopefully removing the stigma and the fear out of it. And so that if someone is curious and so forth, that they can learn about it. Again, I go back to this like sex conversation. And in college, I volunteered. They had a condom co-op on campus, right? And my family was like, "What are you doing?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, I pass out condoms on like Friday night." They're like, "So this is what college is about, right?" And then, but the whole thing was like, no judgment what you're gonna do with it, right? Like, either you're gonna do it or you're not. But if you are, be safe. Here you go, right? And so that's kind of the same mindset I take to this. And I'm not saying like, hey, go do psychedelics. It's gonna cure everything that ails you. Um, what I am saying is, you or someone may be interested in doing it. And how do you stay safe, right? When people say don't drink and drive, they're not saying um don't drink. They're just saying, if you do drink, don't drive, right? So it's the same. I think it's just, again, like, the one of our pillars is just to destigmatize it, so that we can have um productive and safe conversations about it, and educated and informed conversations, and so that we just really remove fear.
Hmm, I love that. All right, so where can people find
Yeah.
Span? Right.
Um,
And
yeah.
also, do you have any of the online uh past things recorded by any chance? Or
We
you do?
do, yeah,
Okay.
thank you. So
Okay.
our website is SPAN base, BASE.org. So it's our home base online. So I think SPAN was taken, so we decided SPAN base would be our home. So if you go to our website, you can sign up for our mailing list, and all of our webinars are also recorded. So when you sign up for the webinar, it will be emailed to you, and you will also get our typically monthly, not too spammy or spammy. It's very spammy, not spammy newsletter. And we also have, and also our IG is span base. Also, if you just Google that, not Google, sorry. If you search on that, you'll find us. I think we are linked to you now, this podcast. If you follow this amazing podcast that Wendy and Dana host, you will also find us as a follower, find us there as well. But yeah, that's how you find us. We have our event coming up in early February in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is a wellness rave. We're going to have a cacao ceremony. We're going to have some live music. We also have Amelia Aglow, who is from Granite Burn. She is our headlining artist. And so we're super excited to have her. Um, we're having a great giveaway. We have some great raffles. We have tarot. We have chair massage, and we're also more recently we added henna hand painting. So we're super excited for this event.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I wish I could just hop over.
Oh,
Not such an easy flight. But
you know,
thank you so much for coming on here, and I hope that people see like you're just a normal person. Like
mhm,
it normal people out there
mhm.
just trying to make a difference. And it's not as hard as what people think to get involved and help whatever your cause is.
I mean, lastly, if anyone wants to email me directly, they can always find me, Jenny, that's Jenny, at spanbase.org. I will respond to everyone. Just give me some time after this event. But if you have any questions or if we can be a resource to you, happy to connect. We also have a LinkedIn. Again, just search Span and you'll find us there. I will say we're not as active on LinkedIn, but that's also something that we're hoping to change in 2026. So,
I I think yeah, so on the episode page, when you scroll down and see Jenny there, you'll be able to see their website, their Instagram, and their LinkedIn. So
thank
it is
you.
there for you. Yeah. Okay.
Well, Wendy, it was so nice. I just want to say thank you, like for what you're doing and all the community building that you've done, how we met and everything. I really, really appreciate you and Dana and the platform to just again normalize this conversation. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, everybody. I will close out the room the way I always close out the room. So let's all take a big, a deep breath in together. And now let's sigh or growl it out.
Woo!
All right. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
May
Bye bye.
all go forth and flourish.